Hey everybody, it's Brian Kemper here with Stand True Pro-Life Outreach, the youth outreach of Priests for Life. And this is the show Pro-Life is the New Punk Rock, which is also the title of my new book that will be released at the March for Life in Washington, D.C. this year. And that's really what we're going to be talking about. This show will air right before the March for Life. And I have an amazing guest today, someone who I look up to and just respect a lot for her courage and her boldness in standing up against the slaughter of innocent children. Terrisa Bukovinac from POW. Teresa, how are we doing?
Hey, Brian. Doing great. Thank you.
Did I pronounce your last name correctly this time?
No, it's Bukovinac, not
Bukovinac. I apologize. I apologize. I apologize.
Hey, there's no other Bukovinacs in the U.S. to offend, so you're fine.
There we go. That's all right. People write to me all the time and spell my name with an I. It's so.
Oh, yeah. I mean, your name is like the most important word in your life. So, it should be right.
Anyway, Teresa, so we first met out in San Francisco, my birth town, actually, where I was born. Raised mostly down in Southern California, but was born in San Francisco and lived around there. We met doing pro-life activism. And I would like to talk to you a little bit about that. But before we get into that, your journey into the pro-life movement is different from a lot of people's. Everybody has their different journey. I come from an old punk rock background, and my drug overdose, which led me to a faith, also brought me to the pro-life movement. It was going to see a Christian punk rock band called The Crucified, and they had a song called The Silent Scream. Now, most people, when they think pro-life, when they think pro-lifers, they think Christian or they think Catholic. They think it has to be because of your faith that you're pro-life, that nobody that's an atheist or agnostic or any of these other things, they don't really, because it's not a God thing. And I think that that's something that really made me want to find out more about you and the people that you work with, who I've spent time with now and find to be amazing human beings, because it really wasn't a faith background that brought you into this movement. So I want you to share a little bit about your story and why you would come and talk to some old Catholic white guy about anti-abortion on a TV show here.
Yes, thank you, Brian. It wasn't faith that brought me to the pro-life position. In fact, it was actually kind of the opposite. It was losing my faith. I was very active in my church for several years into my 20s, and I was like on the board of evangelicals. But the church that I belonged to was pretty pro-choice. Like, they didn't really talk about abortion, but it was the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America that pretty much doesn't take a position on it. And so I just didn't, I thought babies go to heaven when they die. God is going to right all the wrongs in the end. There's a lot of horrible things happening in the world, and I'm not getting involved in that. And they're not nearly as morally complicated as abortion. So I was pretty pro-choice, but it was really when I didn't believe in a life after death anymore. And when I didn't believe, babies were going to heaven, or that any of the injustice in the world was necessarily going to be set right unless I and others were able to intervene. So it really made me think about it in a different way and made me feel urgently about human rights issues. And, those were kind of the early days of the internet. There were a lot of conversations going on about God, religion, animal rights. I'm a vegan. I'm an animal rights activist and have always carried kind of a sensitivity to animals. And people would challenge me on that and say, how can you, care about the dolphins while you support Planned Parenthood? And I really had to think about that. Do I support Planned Parenthood? I knew that I didn't feel comfortable saying I'm pro-life because I wasn't Christian or right wing. I've always been pretty politically left leaning. But I knew that I had some discomfort with it. And over time, I came in contact with a group called Secular Pro-Life online.
Kelsey Hazard.
Yeah, that totally changed everything for me. Once I knew that there were other non-religious pro-lifers out there and pro-lifers who actually were left-leaning politically as well, I felt completely emboldened to then call myself pro-life. And being able to assume the label changed everything as well, because then I was I realized I was part of a bigger movement and that I had a very significant role to play, which was to be that representation for people like me, to show them that they too are a part of the pro-life movement and they're necessary for actually ending abortion in secular and left-leaning communities where we know the fight is going to be after Roe is overturned.
I'm just waving to your cat in the background.
Which one is it? The orange one?
Yeah, so I can't tell. It's got white paws, white boots.
Oh yeah, that's a Vici.
Yeah. So sorry, guys, I got a little distracted, but I love animals too. But it's interesting to me. One, to clarify too, because I think I want to be fair to those Lutherans that are pro-life. We know that the Wisconsin and the Missouri Synod Lutheran Church have taken a decent stand, and the ELCA is like a lot of other mainstream denominations that have kind of gone away from that Orthodox beliefs and such. But I completely understand that. And for me, it's interesting because it was almost this weird opposite type thing. Is when I came into the pro-life movement, I had a much bigger mohawk and tattoos and more piercings. And I would go to pro-life events in the late 80s and nobody believed I was a Christian. Nobody believed I was pro-life. I would walk up sometimes to prayer events outside abortion mills, and people would be like, "Oh, no, you're not." They thought I was a plant. I was a fake undercover, and it took a long time for people in the pro-life movement to say, "Yeah, you could be one of us." I would show up to the March for Life with literally 400 or 500 punk rock crazy kids, do it. And a lot of people did embrace us and thought, wow, this is beautiful to see this diversity. But there were some that were still had a hard time for a long time. And I know that one of the first times that I really sat down with a lot of the young people that are with POW, they didn't care. They didn't judge me because I'm an old Catholic white guy. They didn't push me away for that. All they cared about was my dedication to seeing an end to the killing of innocent children in the womb. And my background of other ways didn't matter. And I thought that was beautiful. I thought that sitting down with all you guys, I mean, you and I had already been friends. You already know I'm a dork. I mean, it doesn't matter. But it was just a beautiful thing. And it reminded me a lot of when I first came into the pro-life movement. And I know that, not to bash anyone or anything, but I know you've had some of the same response from people as like, how could you? Yeah, but the fact is, Teresa, if let's say you and I are in San Francisco or Washington, D.C. or New York City, and we're walking down an alley and we see a woman being beat up by a man, we're not going to stop and ask each other, well, do we agree on faith before we intercede? Do we, we're not going to do that, because what we see is an injustice, a violent act happening. We're going to do what we can to stop that violent act. And I'm not going to worry about, what church you go to or, you don't go to or any of that kind of stuff. What I'm going to worry about is there is a human being who is being abused, and we need to stop it. Firemen don't stop and check the faith of other, when you call the police department, are you a Baptist? Make sure you send a Baptist cop. Like that to me is how I look at this. Is you and I are two human beings who believe in the dignity of life, and that every human being should be treated with dignity, which means not ripping them limb from limb.
For starters.
For starters, yeah. So that's how I look at it going into this battle. I'm not going to check your church card or any other card. What I'm going to look at is, hey, do you see that? That's wrong, right? Let's go do something about it.
Yeah, the unity piece is so important. It's something that I've studied in social justice movements of the past. It's very common, actually, for social justice movements just begin to fall apart because of internal differences. And, it goes even further than just faith and politics even. Like, we're going to encounter people whose strategies or behaviors we find problematic. But like you said, I mean, this is an emergency situation. This is
Yes,
a literal modern day Holocaust that we're dealing with right now. And
absolutely.
inside a concentration camp, we are not in a position to be like, well, this person's problematic and I don't like this person's politics. We have lives to save and it's urgent. And so, this is something that I'm very committed to, and something that I know is very difficult, not just for me to achieve or for you or for the movement as a whole, but anyone seeking justice on behalf of others. So it's something that I've really taught my activists from the beginning, and something that I think that pro-life leftists have struggled with in terms of having a place in the pro-life movement for decades, since the beginning of Roe, because people feel caught in between a lot of different convictions. But it's really important for those that are involved with POW leadership, to understand how critical it is to be singularly focused on saving the unborn.
Absolutely. And you have people involved with POW that do have a faith background and that
Yeah,
do
yeah,
claim
for
to
everyone.
believe in God.
For everyone, we're coming at it primarily from a very leftist, anti-capitalist perspective, but that definitely includes people of faith. My director of activism, Lauren Handy, is a devout Catholic. But we work together because we align in our progressive values and our anti-abortion values, and we see the critical need for people on the left to be able to communicate the pro-life message to our own people so that we can truly end abortion in America and set a global standard.
And like I said, some of those same obstacles that you face, I you know, full sleeve tattoos 25, 30 years ago, it scared a lot of people away. But the fact is, I'll tell you actually one of the one of my favorite memories of the early days of getting involved. There's one of our people at Priest for Life. His name is Jerry Horn. He, and I believe it was in 1994, introduced me to Nellie Gray at the March for Life. And at first, like, he brought me back to this thing, and Nellie Gray's looking at me and he's telling Nellie, hey, this is my friend Brian. He's been involved in rescue. He does all this stuff. And Nellie looks at me and she goes, Brian, I don't care about the haircut or the tattoos. She goes, but man, those painted fingernails, I can't handle it. And so I looked at Nellie. I said, if you're going to accept me for who I am, then guess what? I won't paint my fingernails when I come to the March for Life. And I just said, cool, no problem. But she embraced me and she brought me in and later entrusted me to start the youth rally at the March for Life. And Nellie was somebody who was, absolutely no compromise, no exceptions. It's never okay to kill a child. But she also was very open and accepting to me. And I thought that was amazing. But getting back to the activism and such, one of the things I also loved is I've seen you come to prayer vigils. I've seen you come to a candlelight prayer vigil, hold a candle. You didn't boo-hoo anybody. You didn't try to encourage anyone not to pray. You didn't try to do anything to interrupt. You sat there silently holding your candle because you knew that you were just standing in solidarity with the belief that we must end child killing. And in the same way, I've come to a POW event, and I remember one in particular where you started to hand me a sign and you looked at it and you go, oh no, Brian can't hold this one. Here, Brian, here's one you can hold. And you respected my thing about that. And I thought that was awesome. And I remember that stuck in my head, how much you just were instantly, nope, I don't want to put Brian in that bad situation.
Yeah, it's important to me. I mean, people put me in that position all the time. And, like you said, people can be very hostile to people who are different, especially in the pro-life movement. I get comments all the time on my social media. We don't want you. Like, the pro-life movement doesn't want you. It's like, well, I'm not doing this so that the pro-life movement will want me. I'm doing this because I'm seeking victory. And that means making a place for everyone. I used to be a meat-eating, pro-choice Christian. My I have had so many paradigm shifts in my life that I feel like it's so just inappropriate to be so arrogant about your beliefs that, like, yes, these are the conclusions that I've come to, and I know the reasons why, but I'm not so arrogant to think that I'm absolutely right about everything finally. Like, you just have to make room for other opinions and other beliefs,
Mhm.
especially if you're coming together to fight such a just cause like ending abortion.
Now, Teresa, you know that myself, Father Frank Pavone, many of us consider you a close friend. Many of us, you know, when I go to DC, the last time I was in DC, you're the first person I called to say, "Hey, let's go get lunch."
Yep.
And you're like, "Nope, we're making signs. Bring food over to the apartment. Let's do it." I
Yep.
love that. Like it's. I have a few hours to kill. I don't want to use that word, but before we head off to this event, and I was going to go just grab some food, and you're like, "No, get your butt over here. We're making signs," type of a thing. And I love that. I love that. And I miss some of those old days when I was just young punk rock kid and could do, all that stuff. And so to me, it's refreshing. And again, I was at your apartment and there was a Catholic, there was an atheist, there was all these people, you know, and you were working on your speech for that night.
Oh yeah.
Everybody was doing something. And I love that. And you guys were showing me the new POW shirt, which I still have not gotten my POW shirt,
Oh, yeah,
Teresa.
I got one for you. Are you coming to Chicago? March for Life
I
Chicago?
am not going to be in Chicago, but I'll see you in DC.
Okay.
Size large.
Yeah.
So, but
I'll marked.
well, I really appreciate it, and I love the fact that you are, it's sort of like Justin Bieber or Justin Timberlake saying bringing sexy back. You're bringing activism back, and
Yes.
I love it because I think that hanging out and again, it was fun in DC at the December 1st Supreme Court, Dobbs versus Jackson. I remember just kind of standing back with the POW group and just absolutely so excited to see this activism and see people um, standing up so boldly because I do believe street activism is extremely important. Now, yes, things like this, online, internet access, activism, all that stuff, but just being there in the streets. And I watched too a lot of the young people that were with POW sitting and having side conversations with people that were pro-abortion because something intrigued them about somebody holding a sign that says I'm an atheist against abortion or something like that. You guys, just by simply being there with those signs, sparked conversation and sorry to use a Christian term, planted seeds.
Is that a Christian term? I hadn't even
But
thought
you know what I'm saying.
that all the time.
Yes.
Yeah, it is
But
exciting. I mean, one of our strategies from the beginning has been to get in front of the cameras to really change the narrative about what it means to be pro-life in this country. We know that we have hearts and minds to change and behaviors to change, and we need a revolution. This isn't just going to be about having conversations with people. We have to change the way they see us in order to change the way they see the unborn. So, like, making a lot of noise at protests, and we had the drums outside the Dobbs rally, like upside down buckets and megaphones, and just cool outfits, and
I literally
get attention.
don't I don't think I saw a news article that had photos that did not have a photo of Kristen with her bullhorn.
Yeah,
Like she was in every. You're probably sitting there going, "What the heck?" On the no, but
well,
she was
I
in.
the main stage, so I wasn't.
Yeah,
It took me a while to get out there, but I'm just so proud of the work they did outside Dobbs. We really are kind of a small contingent, as in relationship to the rest of the pro-life movement, and yet we have been able to gain a ton of visibility by using the science of social justice, the tactics that other social justice movements have used to win, and it's working in terms of, like you said, Kristen was literally in every picture. So I'm really proud of the work that.
again, Christians use this analogy, but anyone can use the analogy that the body is not just one part. Like if I'm hungry, I have to chew broccoli with my teeth. Notice I brought up a vegetable, not.
Thank you.
If I'm chewing broccoli with my teeth, I have to be able to use my hand to get. we're all different parts of a body.
Yeah.
We really are different parts of a body. And in this movement, this family, this pro-life family that we're part of, we need every part, and we need every part to work in order to get to the end goal, which our end goal is to be a post-Roe generation, to see not just the overturning of Roe versus Wade, which is one step, but to a point where every single human person, from the moment of fertilization until natural death, is considered a full human and has full protection under our law.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's it's so important though too that we are raising up the next generation. It's not just about like, us all being different parts of one body. We are, but the younger is going to be moving into places of leadership within the next 3 to 5 years in the movement.
Yes.
They're going to be shifting dramatically. And if we aren't working today at every single event, at every turn to raise them up, to raise new leadership, to also in turn then raise new leaders, then we are going to make this longer and harder for ourselves. So that is another major part of what POW is looking to do. We're raising up young leaders for the next generation.
And I think you're doing a great job. I know I've been in this movement for well over 30 years and have led so many protests in DC, but it was kind of fun to just sit back, hold one of your signs, and let everybody else go. And it was to be there just to support. And I was like, if there was something I could have added that wasn't already being done and there was an opportunity, I would have, but I didn't need to. And it was beautiful to see that. I didn't need to. I just sat there. And there are times when, yes, I will speak up. But again, I'm so encouraged by what you guys are doing with POW and with the activism and everything, and working with groups like the Purple Sash and Stanton Healthcare, and working with different groups out there, with Priests for Life and with Mercy, all these different things. But the fact is, Teresa, we are, I believe, at a breaking point. We are at a point where either people that say they're pro-life stop thinking that pro-life is a noun and start understanding that it must be a verb. There must be action. And I've said that for years, and I mean that so genuinely. We are at a point right now, if we do not take advantage of this and really show this world the pro-life voice, we're going to be set back another 40 years.
I've spent a lot of time thinking about what it's going to take to have a real lasting victory on this issue. And I have looked at what activists did in the 80s and 90s, Operation Rescue in particular. When you enter this movement as a pro-life feminist or as a leftist, one of the things that they teach you kind of right away is that, Operation Rescue made a bad name for our movement. And you kind of have this hostility naturally towards, the use of graphic images, for example, or the idea of disruptive activism at clinics. And so I resisted that for quite a while. Luckily, I had the honor of getting involved with survivors of the abortion Holocaust, Jeff White, that's how we met, I believe.
Yes. And Jeff was my mentor.
And Jeff was very involved in Operation Rescue. And one of the things that Survivors does is train young activists to do disruptive style activism. And it really changed something in me and in my approach. And the more I studied about what Operation Rescue did, the more I realized that there is a reason that the United States is basically the only country in the world that has an active pro-life movement, that has a political party that is pro-life. And it is just very difficult for me to imagine that being the case if Operation Rescue hadn't mobilized thousands of people around these facilities where the killing was happening, while the killing was happening, willing to put their bodies in between the oppressors and the oppressed, willing to face sanctions, arrests. Some, faced severe police brutality. And this went on for nearly 2 decades
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
before it was, essentially shut down by the federal government with the FACE Act. But this has been a huge inspiration for me. And since then, I've had the honor of meeting and working alongside Randall Terry, who was the founder of Operation Rescue. And I have come to the conclusion that it's time to bring the rescue movement back. I think we are stuck as a movement in a cycle of obedience. And that obedience is to a totalitarian regime, which is forcing abortion on these communities, especially low income communities who statistically are less likely to support things like taxpayer funded abortion because they recognize the eugenic and classist nature of the abortion regime. And so when I'm looking at social justice movements of the past, how do you overthrow a dictator? How do you overthrow and fight a violent oppressor like Planned Parenthood? And that is through nonviolent direct action. And we have a right to rescue these children who are literally staggering to slaughter.
I would add to that, Teresa, not just a right, but a responsibility.
They have a right to be rescued, and we
Yes.
have a responsibility to rescue them. And
yeah, I got my start, like I told you, with Operation Rescue. I've been arrested many times, and the longest I got sentenced to was 30 days in county jail, which honestly is nothing compared to the blessings I have in my life. Like the fact that I had to spend 30 days in jail and somebody, a human being, was rescued from being killed, bring it on. I could care less if to be honest. And that's what we need to do. We need to be willing to say, I'm willing to put my life down for someone else. And I think that, like, I don't know if this completely relates, but like this morning, I was actually sort of in tears a little bit. I tweeted something out. There was a couple in a car in Virginia, and that pile up, that happened recently, where they were stuck for 20 something hours on the highway, and they saw a phone number on a bread truck company. They called the company. The company then called the driver of that truck and instructed him to pass out all the bread in the truck to stuck motorists. And I look at that and I'm like, gosh, that's amazing. Like that needs to be what we see on the opening of the news, is somebody did something right. Didn't worry about profits, didn't worry about the fact that they worried about human beings were in danger, that were starving, and they just went and did something. And I wish that we could have more of that in this movement. We just need to go out and do. Now, obviously, we don't believe in violence. We're not going to go do anything violent. But if I could put my body between the killer and the child, I think I should be willing to do that. And I am.
That bread analogy is speaking right to my leftist heart, Brian.
It really was. I don't think it's leftist. I think it's human.
Well,
it's human.
A world where people matter more than profit, and right.
Absolutely. And I wrote on Twitter, I wish I lived near that bakery, because that's where I would get every single piece of bread for the rest of my life. It's in Baltimore, by the way. But I love it. I thought it was great. We're actually got down to a minute and a half left, Teresa. I want to have you back. We're going to be hanging out in DC. And I hope anybody at the March for Life, if you see anything with a big PAUU flag or something, go hang out. Go talk to the people. If you see me or Teresa, come talk to us. I know we'll be hanging out at the Renaissance and a few other places. And I don't know, are you coming to San Francisco the next day?
I won't be in San Francisco.
Okay.
I'm going to be in Chicago this weekend for the
Chicago. Kristen will be out there, right?
No, Kristen will be with me in DC, but Robert will.
Okay. Excellent.
San Francisco, my former organization.
All right. So this is where, Teresa, if you don't mind, I'm going to, for those that would like, I'm going to lead a prayer, and then we'll say goodbye in just a second. So, God, I just thank you for this day and for the opportunity to talk to this amazing human being, Teresa, and for her being a friend and a fellow activist in my life. And I just want to thank you and ask that you help open people's eyes to the plight of every single child in the womb that's facing abortion, and that people will not just wake up, but stand up against the murder of innocent children. I just pray this in Jesus' name. Now, Teresa, again, thank you for being on with me. And I hope that, hanging out with an old Catholic white guy doesn't hurt your credibility much, but
Bit.
a little bit. Yeah. Anyway, we will see you in DC. We're going to have you on the show again when you guys have new projects coming out. We want to feature them on this show, and know that I count you as a friend and a fellow human. And it doesn't matter to me, where you stand on those things. I appreciate you as a human being, and I wish you nothing but the best in your life. And we'll see you in a couple weeks in DC.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Brian.
Awesome. Hey guys, I'm Brian Kemper. This has been Pro-Life is the New Punk Rock. Please look up on social media, POW, Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising, PAAU. Check it out on social media, and we'll see you next time.